Hello everyone, this is Jinyi, the first author of this paper. Today I'm going to present our work, Centaur, a novel architecture for reliable, low-wear, high-density 3D NAND storage. Before diving into our 3D NAND proposal, let's take a look at the trend of the NAND flash. 2D NAND flash cannot keep increase their density, because as the cell size below 20 nanometer, there will be severe disturbance induce reliable issues. Therefore, the NAND flash vendors embrace the 3D NAND flash technology. Basically, it stack the NAND cell on top of others to increase the density. However, by doing so, can significantly prolong the program latency, which means write. Therefore, they further propose the FSP, full sequence program operation, to program more data at a time to increase the throughput to ease the performance degradation issue. However, this kind of approach can introduce a lifetime degradation because the normal program operation is around 10K. However, the FSP is around 100K, which is really, and the SSD firmware can typically adapt on one kind of program granularity, which will cause a problem that if we keep perform the small writes, then large portion of data will be empty data, which will waste of the write operations. So this kind of FSP can introduce the performance and lifetime dilemma, which is the case we want to solve in our work. This is today's outline. First, I will give a background on the SSD and then program operation, and then I will give the motivation and the overview of our Centaur. And the Centaur have a three-part: dispatcher, work stealer, and data migrator. And finally, I will give the evaluation of our work. Here shows the overview of SSD. SSD contains three components. First one is the SSD controller, which is run a FTL, flash translation layer, to translate the logical address to the physical address on the NAND chips. And the FTL need a mapping table, which is stored in the DRAM buffer. And the DRAM buffer also stores some of temporary written data, so that the performance of SSD can be better. And the rest of them are the NAND chips. And all NAND chips are serial connected by the channels. And here shows all chips. And every chips have multiple die in it. And every die will have multiple plane. And each plane will have thousands of blocks. And each block will have hundreds of word lines. And each word line contains lots of pages. And in this case, this is a TLC NAND flash. So every word line can contain 3 pages. And please note that a page is the basic read-write unit of SSD. Typically, it's 8K or 60K. And the block is the basic unit of erase operation. The erase operation is because every page need to first be erased to be rewrite. So that we need to perform a program and an erase operation when there are lots of write. And since there are only limited number can be limited write erase number can be performed on a block. So typically we refer those write erase operation as a lifetime of SSD. Here we introduce the background of program operation. First is the baseline program operation. The program operation typically contains 2 parts. First part is transfer data from DRAM buffer to the NAND chip. Second part is perform an operation to directly write data to the NAND flash itself. Yes, and as you can see, that's the chip program time dominate all the program operation. So later, we will mainly focus on chip. However, the evaluation will contain both 2 parts to give an accurate result. This is a baseline operation. As you can see, there are multi-plane architecture of the chip. So actually, they already invented multi-plane operation, which program multiple plane at the same time to improve the entire throughput. And the third one is the cache program operation, which is introduced to hidden the channel transfer time. Because as you can see, if by doing so, we can hidden the channel transfer time to increase the write performance. And the last one is the FSP operation, which basically program multiple data in the same word line at the same time. As you can see here, that's 3 pages are actually in the same word line. So that all of them can be programmed at the same time to improve the overall performance. Okay, as we mentioned in the observation, like 3D NAND will have a longer program latency, and FSP can mitigate this kind of the low write throughput issues, but it can introduce lifetime problems. Let's see the quantitative data to justify this. In this experiment, we will contain two type of settings. One is ISO die, another one is ISO capacity. In the ISO die setting, we have a 1 2D NAND compared to a 1 3D NAND. And the ISO capacity, we got 8 2D die compared to the 1 3D die. Okay, let's first see the performance comparison. As you can see from those two figures, that's the H 2D NAND chip setting can outperform the rest of two of them. The reason is that the 2D, this kind of setting can have a better intra-chip parallelism because they have 8 chips compared to the rest of two only got 1 chip, so the performance can be better. But the downside is that it will have a lower density because you have multiple chips. And for the rest of the two settings, we can see under a large granularity, the 3D NAND can outperform the 2D NAND. The reason is that they can program more pages of data at the same time to improve the performance. However, in a small granularity case, 2D NAND outperforms 3D NAND. This is because the 2D NAND can write exactly amount of data into a NAND chip compared to the 3D NAND, so they can have a better performance. And let's take a look at a lifetime comparison here. And the lifetime comparison is calculated based on the number of erase operation being performed on the chip divided by the erase operation can be performed. And as you can see here, that's only the single 3D NAND chip got a serious lifetime problem, which can around 80 times of the lifetime degradation compared to the rest of two. The reason is that those small writes are amplified to a really large write because they need to write every time into a very large granularity. So that they will contain a lot of empty data in it. So this is not good for the lifetime. And one might think that, okay, actually, because current state of our SSD typically contain a large DRAM buffer, so that we can accumulate small write into a large write so that we don't have a problem. However, this is not true because that low DRAM buffer cannot be accumulated small write to a large write all the time because they will have a system issue, a sync operation to force them to write the data from DRAM to the NAND flash itself. Therefore, here we show the 12 write dominant workload. As you can see, most of workload still dominated by the small write. Small write means the write smaller than 60K. So that means that NAND flash still can accept a lot of this kind of small write and the lifetime can still be degraded. Okay, in summary, that's multiple 2D NAND chip can give a better performance, but they will have a lower density. And the 3D NAND chip, on the other hand, can provide extremely high density, but the performance and lifetime can be bad under a small write. Therefore, to acquire both a high density, high performance, and lower, we propose a heterogeneous NAND storage, Centaur. Here is an overview of our Centaur. We still contain 3 components, controller, DRAM, and NAND chips. But here NAND chips got 2 different types of NAND chips. One is 2D NAND, another is 3D NAND, and both NAND flash are evenly distribute across the all channels to improve the performance. And instead of use the traditional cache-based management where the data will first go to 2D NAND, and when the 2D NAND full of data, move all data to 3D NAND. We adopt another architecture. This kind of architecture, basically, when we receive a request, we decide whether we should go to 2D NAND or 3D NAND. Because the 2D NAND are good at the small write, and the 3D NAND are good at a large write. And this is a dispatcher, and we also do a work stealer and migration to balance the data between 2D NAND and 3D NAND. The reason is right, if we have a more valid data in a 2D NAND or a 3D NAND, then they will trigger more garbage collection. So that it's not good for lifetime. Here we show the figure that have the data showing that the lifetime versus the duration of the valid data. As you can see, if we have a more valid data in it, it will spend more lifetime for a certain workload. So here we use a work stealer and data migrator to balance between them to achieve a better lifetime. Let's take a look at the first one of our proposal, dispatcher. The dispatcher basically is dispatch based on the dispatcher conditions. Here we show that the basic idea is that we try to write as much as data into a 3D NAND FSP pages so that we can significantly reduce the lifetime degradation. So we dispatch a 3D NAND if we find out that those kind of data can fully occupy the 3D FSP pages. If it can't, we will dispatch the data to the 2D NAND itself. And also, this kind of DC is not a static set value. It actually can be dynamically changed. The change criteria is based on the span lifetime of 2D NAND and 3D NAND. If we find out that we spend more lifetime, 3D NAND lifetime, we will try to make the rest of data being dispatched to 2D so that the lifetime can be dispatched. To do so, we will increase the DC so that more data will be directed to a 2D NAND. And if we found a 2D NAND got more span lifetime, we will decrease the DC. And the right-hand side figures shows that the dispatcher will dispatch a write request to the 2D NAND or 3D NAND based on the DC. And later, here we will introduce the rest of two components. And the work stealer is basically to steal the request from 3D NAND to 2D NAND. Traditionally, the work stealer is to improve the performance. However, here we are mainly focused on the lifetime because as when showing before, the lifetime is more serious problem in here. Yes, so however, if we don't constrain the amount of data being stored from a 3D NAND to 2D NAND, then ultimately all data will be processed by 2D NAND because 2D NAND have much higher performance compared to a 3D. Yeah, so here we introduce the MSC, migrate and store conditions. The concept of this slide is that we don't want 2D NAND or 3D NAND to have too many valid data ratios because if they are imbalanced writing ratios, that means that someone will spend more lifetime. So we only perform the work stealer if we found that 3D NAND got more valid data ratios. And on the contrary, in the data migrate part, we only trigger when we find out that 2D NAND will have too much valid data in it. Because in that case, we will spend more lifetime on the 2D NAND part, which will cause a serious lifetime problem. This is basically our proposal on Centaurs. Let's take a look at our evaluations. We augmented the SSD scenes to model both 2D NAND and 3D NAND. And as showing here that we are mainly focused on lifetime instead of performance because the lifetime degradation is more serious. In our experiment, we performed 3 different kind of configuration, ISO capacity, ISO die, and extra chip. And due to the time limit, here we only present the result of ISO capacity one, so the rest of one can be referred to a paper. The first one shows our Centaur against our baseline. As we can see, we can improve the lifetimes by 3.7 times compared to the baseline. The reason is that we can successfully dispatch the small write to the 2D NAND, so the 3D NAND are not affected by the serious lifetime degradation as shown in the figures. Yeah, and for the performance parts, as we can see here, there are not huge performance difference between our proposal and the 3D NAND baseline. The reason is that there is a large DRAM in between, so the most of latency are already hidden by the DRAM buffer, so the performance difference is not very significant. Okay, so as we mentioned before, one might think that DRAM buffer can help us to mitigate all kinds of these small write-induced problems. And here we show that this is not true. It's that, as you can see, that because that system will periodically issue the sync operation so to force the data being write from DRAM buffer to a 3D NAND. So as you can see here, that our Centaur can still improve the span lifetime significantly as shown here. And for the performance part, yes, to increase from 0 megabyte to 64 megabyte, DRAM buffer can significantly improve the performance. However, further increase the DRAM buffer cannot improve the performance anymore because as mentioned before, the sync command. However, our Centaur can further increase the performance compared to the one with our proposal. The last one, we shows our comparison against the hybrid NAND proposal, which contain the SLC and MLC chip. However, those kind of proposals cannot perform well on our system. The reason is that they are basically 2D NAND proposal, and they are not aware of those kind of large granular FSP operation as a result. So they cannot tailor to the FSP granularity to mitigate the lifetime problems. So the Centaur is better than those proposals now. Here is our conclusion is that the 3D FSP can address the performance degradation issues. However, it can possibly cause a lifetime issue under a small write dominant workload. To address that problem, we propose a heterogeneous 2D and 3D NAND SSD Centaur, which can ensure that small write are performed by the 2D NAND, and we also balance the lifetime between the 2D NAND and 3D NAND, so the overall lifetime are not degraded. And evaluation shows that our Centaur proposal can successfully mitigate those lifetime issues. Thank you.